My name is Joy, or Joya, if I was welcomed into the order in May 2020. 4 months later, got on an airplane and moved to Hong Kong, where I dually serve as a United Methodist missionary, working with migrant domestic workers here in the city, primarily from Philippines and Indonesia. So I do work with migrant domestic workers, and I also do human rights work around issues in the Philippines. I grew up in the Western North Carolina Annual Conference, and had been a United Methodist woman since I was 12. So I was raised by the women of Brooks Howell. And so the deaconess relationship has always been something that I knew well and was very fond of, and got a lot of my mentorship in my faith through the deaconesses of Brooks Howell through the years. And then we had our first active deaconesses in the annual conference, Lynn Sloan Barnes, shepherded me literally across the country to assembly in 2005, 2006. That was my freshman year of college. And she willingly took a college kid with her across the country. And so I learned a lot from her, and it was through those relationships that I began to understand and really hear my calling to something not in like traditional ordained ministry, but really the ministry in the margins. And then I started I heard the calling, but I was like, well, what does this look like? I started doing human rights work and migrants' rights work with Filipinos and the Philippines. I met the wonderful, amazing deaconesses there who were like, why aren't you a deaconess yet? So then I was like, okay, maybe deaconesses can be young people. And so I applied and was part of the 2020 class. The two words that really come to mind are diversity and adaptation. Whatever comes up in the world or the structure, wherever we're serving, we find the creative ways to adapt, adapt our callings, adapt our ministries to fit the concrete times that we are living in. And the diversity that I think reflects the United Methodist Church. I grew up in Western North Carolina, but I'm out of Calpac, which is one of the more diverse annual conferences. We worship in 21, 22 languages on any given Sunday. But while most may not know what the deaconess are, the diversity in the program and the diversity in our order and in the community, I think, is something that really drew me to the community, where we're able to have conversations about challenging issues, and still at the end of those we may not agree, but we're able to love and to embrace each other in this shared calling of laity and into ministries of love, justice, and kindness. I managed to find the two best kept secrets of the United Methodist Church, the Global Mission Fellows Program and the Deaconess and Home Missioner Order. And I think that really became clear to me when I moved to the Western jurisdiction, where there, for some reason, are so few deaconesses, and it was having to do a lot of that basic education. No, I am a voting member of my annual conference. No, this is a legitimate ministry. And there was a small but mighty group of deaconesses that are slowly growing. We're slowly growing in the West, that I think really push that. So I think the more we can, in places like Western North Carolina, where there is Brooks Howell, deaconesses are very well known, but the more we can get out and break through that United Methodist Church discernment events about its ordination or nothing, and get out to the young people and also the young adults in the world, and the people of different ages, I think will help more people know about it. Because when I would talk with even the deaconesses in Calpac, they'd be like, you're so lucky you knew about this when you were young. I'm like, I'm so lucky it's called Brooks Howell. But that unique position I was in is not something that's easily accessible. So I think the more we can get out, especially to annual conferences who may not have deaconesses or may have one or two, I think can help more people just know we're not history. One, we exist. Two, we're young. My original appointment was to the International Coalition for Human Rights in the Philippines, U.S. chapter, and I would get asked a lot, because I'm not Filipino, but really have this calling to do human rights work for the Philippines. And if you've heard me speak, you've heard some of the reasons behind that. But that people like, why do you care? You're not Filipino, it's not you. And for me, it's this mandate to building the global community through the Church Universal that we're all connected. The issues, the human rights issues in the Philippines have a very clear direct connection to the US. And as someone whose ancestors colonized and really started some of these historic human rights abuses, that I can help fix that error and help bring in a love of justice and compassion to these communities in the margins. And so I think that's something that's really important to who I am, and helping build that bridge and serving in spaces where people may not expect to find a church person, to find somebody young or somebody who's doing that work. And I served as a global missions fellow in Hong Kong, where I learned directly what issues of injustice and robbing life of dignity and worth look like with the treatment of the migrant domestic workers here. And the Hong Kong homes are very small. They usually have 2 bedrooms, and then someone hires a domestic worker and expects them to sleep on the couch or literally in the toilet, like the bathroom. And so seeing this and then meeting these workers, I think began to understand, what does it mean to be the hands and feet of Jesus, eradicating this injustice in a very concrete way that brought back empowerment, and they were able to find their lives and their voices. And so I'm serving again as a missionary where I served originally as a global missions fellow, and being here to really see that while the work has progressed and there's been some victories, that we're still dealing with those same issues. We're still dealing, especially during the global pandemic, and that work to alleviate suffering, but also more importantly, eradicate injustice and restore that human worth through the day-to-day in the midst of a global pandemic, when many of the migrants here can't go home because of the pandemic situations in their home countries. To see that force and how that impacts them, I think is a really important part of my ministry and my work in restoring that dignity, but also then helping people in the United States, my partner churches and other people, understand what's going on outside of the US and understand these direct connections, and that we're a global church every day, not just every 4 years when General Conference meets. And so therefore we should care every day, not just every 4 years.